Hi, everybody. This is Cheryl Knight, and I'm here under the team of talent needs for the evolving energy ecosystem, and joined by my colleagues, Pat Huffnagel-Smith and Andrea Newell. But more importantly, we have an excellent panel of 4 individuals, and we'll tell you more about them in a few minutes. So Pat and I have been doing work for more years than we'd like to be specific about regarding career transition, especially in the energy ecosystem. And one of the things that we've noticed, a key thing, which is the focus for today, is that employers are looking for something different than they did in the past. And it's not always easy for job seekers or career transitioners to understand what employers are looking for. But fortunately, we have seen that the training landscape has changed and it continues to evolve. So this panel is really set up to give you the opportunity to learn more about the skills and the knowledge that's needed in the evolving energy ecosystem, which includes oil and gas, and to specifically learn about the training and learning that's available. And this would not have been possible if it were not for the province of Alberta, who's working in partnership with the Government of Canada to support this webinar amongst other employment support programs and services. So the way we're going about our agenda today is through our panel, who are listed here on this slide. And we've come up with a number of questions for the panel that are apropos to the topic. And then we'd like to give you the opportunity to ask your questions. And I'll talk to you a little bit more about that in a second. But I do want to give you a heads up that this is meant to be active participation with you thinking about the choices that you're making, the dilemmas that you're facing, and really how learning more about the needs of the environment or employers will help you to make the best choices for yourself in your job search or career transition. And then we'll round out the discussion with some information about financial resources that are available for you, as well as other resources. So what I'd like to do now is go back to telling you a little bit more about the panelists. They've sent us a bio, which we're going to share with you in the package that follows up this session. And I'm going to go through each of them with a few highlights from their bio. But what I found extremely interesting when I read their bios is each of them have also undergone a career transition. And through that, they've become adept and expert at connecting the dots between their areas of expertise and the evolving needs in the broader environment to offer learning or training opportunities. So for you that are attending here, this is a really what I think is a incredible opportunity. You can be the judge of that. But again, I'd like you to think about what you want to get from this session, and to do so, obviously, in listening to what the panelists have to say, but also in asking your own questions. So I'll start out by telling you a little bit about Heidi. So Heidi is the director at Workforce Development for Manpower. And Manpower is an organization that works primarily through government funding to offer free programs to job seekers. And she does that, her and her team do that by working with industry to understand what training they need, and to offer employment programs that provide employment services as well as upskilling to help you to navigate the changing environment and to prepare yourself for the changing world of work. Secondly, I'd like to introduce you to Kathleen Couturier. Kathleen is with us from Lakeland College, and she's the coordinator of the Sustainable Energy Program. Now, Kathleen started as a graphic designer, so that's where her educational background came from. And then she went from there to the federal government before joining Lakeland in 2014. Now, Lakeland College is based in Vermilion and Lloydminster, and I am guessing that is where you were not from. But it really doesn't matter because Lakeland's programs are online. So the Sustainable Energy Technology Program that she'll tell you more about that supports sustainable energy skills in renewables is offered online for you. So you don't need to go to Vermilion or Lloydminster to take their programs. Not that they're not super nice places. From there, we're going to go to Degan. Al is a technology leader, and he's worked his full career in technology, starting from his university background, which is in computer science. So he's held innovation and leadership roles and has moved into entrepreneurial ventures. Al actually has his own podcast, which I thought was very interesting. And it's called Leaders, Innovators, and Big Ideas, if you decide to follow Al, which I'm going to do so. And Al, out of interest, helped Heidi from Manpower to start a Manpower program called Tech Careers while he was at Manpower. So they go back a ways. So from leaving Manpower, Al went to an organization called Lighthouse Learning Labs, which I'm sure many of you have heard about. And he is currently with InceptionU, and he's the team lead of a program that's called Full Stack Developer. And they support project-based learning. And through this idea of project-based learning, through a learning program, Al created New Idea Machine, which is a company that provides services to organizations that are looking for services such as software development. But the cool thing is, at InceptionU, he's able to help the students from InceptionU work with New Idea Machine in a hands-on way to learn their software development skills for clients. And finally, we move to Bimal Mehta, who's the Managing Director of Energy Intelligence for Geologic Systems. So Bimal's background is as a chemical engineer. So he's got a master's degree as well as an MBA. And his area of expertise is business intelligence and strategic insights. So he's especially skilled at reading the signals and trends in the environment to understand their impact to businesses and what that means in terms of learning and for you as learners. And with Geologic, he is responsible for a program it's called Evaluate Energy ESG programs, and ESG stands for Environment, Sustainability, and Governance. And these ESG programs help oil and gas learners in particular to develop ESG skills that are very much needed in the oil and gas industry and helping those businesses to thrive into the future. So that is our panel. If you are not totally impressed by the combination and depth of experience that we have available to us, I would be really surprised. And I think you are. So what that means is, again, think back to the decisions that you've made or trying to make, or the quandaries that you have, and think about the ways that these panelists can provide you with advice, and submit your questions through the Q&A button throughout the webinar, because Pat is going to be working hard to collect those questions and to organize them. And so the time we have for your questions is directly related to the number of questions you have. So if you don't have any questions, you're not going to get any time and you're going to miss out. So submit your questions so that you get what you need from this session. Okay, now what I'd like to do is just give you a little bit of background information. And this is really from Pat and my research with respect to career transition and how the evolving energy ecosystem has required primarily oil and gas workers, but other workers to transition, and what this means with respect to training. So we have concluded, no surprise to anybody, we've concluded that in order to be resilient in your career, that ongoing upskilling and training is necessary to meet the emerging requirements of the environment. What is good news, which has become sort of ever more present in the last couple of years, is this really doesn't mean you need to go back to school for another 2 to 4 years to take a degree. You certainly can, and that's an option that many people choose to pursue. But there are many more shorter, more comprehensive and applied learning opportunities that you can pursue that you're going to hear about today. So that's the first learning. The second learning, and again, this wasn't the case a couple of years ago, but the learning system is catching up. It takes time to develop curriculum. It takes money to develop curriculum. And the learning system is absolutely catching up with the needs of the environment. So the learning system offers these short programs, micro-credential certificates that give you the upskilling that you need. And this is very much supported by federal and provincial funding. And I just wanted to highlight a recent program funded, initiated by the government of Alberta called Alberta at Work, which is injecting a significant amount of money, which I think should continue to help the learning system to gain momentum with respect to offering the skills and the programs that are needed. And then lastly, with all of this change going on in the environment and the learning system working to keep up to date with the changes and offer you options, options mean a whole array of opportunities for learners and decisions that you need to make. And we know that this is challenging just by virtue of the array of options, but also by virtue of not being certain about what's right for you with your background or what's right based on what employers are looking for. So I would urge you to think about what you can and are willing to do, because the sky's not the limit for everybody. We have bills to pay, we have families, we have other commitments. So think about what you are willing and able to do, and then set your minds to the best way to do it. And again, the panel questions are designed to give you this information, but we can't possibly ask the panelists all the questions that you have in your minds. So that's why I'm looking for that Q&A button to light up. I feel like a game show host, but that's okay, to light up with your questions. So with that, yeah, it's time to move into the panel discussion. And the way I'd like to start out the panel discussion is by giving the panelists an opportunity to tell us a little bit more about their specific and unique offerings and training programs. You know, why is it unique or important in this environment? And really who it's designed for. And that way, you know, a little bit better about what they have to offer. So with that, I would ask all the panelists to unmute, because I may surprise you in the order I approach this. So everybody get ready. And I don't know, Heidi, are you okay starting us off with telling us a little bit more about what Manpower offers and who it's for?
Absolutely, yes. Thank you, Cheryl. So I work for Manpower, which is a global staffing and recruitment organization. So we have a lot of knowledge about what's going on in the world of work from a perspective of working with businesses and sourcing talent. But within Alberta, we have a workforce development division that I oversee. So I'm the director of that. And what we do in our workforce development division is we offer programs and services that are completely funded by the government to provide training and skill development to Albertans looking for career transition in a variety of areas, and they're completely no cost to those who are eligible for the services. So there will be information provided to you about how to access those services, but we have a few in Calgary specifically that I just wanted to highlight because they are so leading edge and right on top of what's going on in the market. As was mentioned earlier, we have a tech careers program that Degan was a part of when we first launched that program, and we've just this year revamped it into including multiple different technology streams that we offer. So we do offer a full stack software developer stream that we're planning on launching in the coming year. We have a data analytics stream that is currently just started a cohort this week and providing full 12 weeks of in-depth training in data analytics. We also have worked with some other training partners in the space of 3D software development in augmented reality and virtual reality, which is something that people are not as familiar with, but is really taking off in the economy and is a really exciting training program to get into. And we also have digital marketing, which is a very hot area for employment, and then cybersecurity as well. So we're really touching on all the hot areas in technology skill development, and all of those programs are offered in collaboration with the government. So I encourage you to just go to our website if you want more information about when those programs are going to be offered and to learn more about those.
Great, thank you, Heidi. That was excellent. Kathleen, tell us about your program at Lakeland.
Yes, so thank you very much, Cheryl. So I'm the coordinator for the Sustainable Energy Technology Program at Lakeland. And so basically, I'm just going to give you a little bit of an overview of what we do. So as you know, the energy landscape is rapidly changing. So there's an upward trend on the renewable energy development in Alberta and all across Canada. So our sustainable energy programs, they prepare students to embark this energy transition. So as part of our diploma programming, we offer technical courses on solar PV design and installation, wind technology, biofuel and bioenergy, energy efficiency and conservation, and geothermal and geoexchange technologies. Also, as part of our program, we offer practical thinking courses focusing on business, environmental topics, and strategic communication. So for our solar courses, we're registered training providers with the National Board of American Certified Energy Practitioners. We just call it NABCEP. So NABCEP is the American standard in the solar industry, and they're extremely well recognized in Canada as well. So this certification helps our students finding jobs. The diploma program, it takes 2 years to complete for a student taking it full time. If students take it part time, it can take about 4 or 5 years to complete. Students can enter the program at any time, but we highly recommend entering in August or January. And most students, they take their program while they work full-time or part-time jobs. So just so you know, it's not like a complete change of life. And all our courses are offered online except the on-site lab at the end of the diploma. And so our students come from various backgrounds: oil and gas, construction, ex-military, engineering, trades, and IPAS, or they come from all educational and professional backgrounds. So there's no prerequisite to take our program. All we require is that you pass the basic energy principles course, and that is the prerequisite for most of other intro-level courses. So our graduates are ready to access employment in the renewable energy industry. Some of the possibilities include employment opportunities include installer and maintenance of solar, wind, and geothermal systems, sales and services, jobs related to bioenergy and biofuel, consulting jobs, working with municipalities and government, start your own renewable energy business, building manager or operator, and much more. So for people who can't commit to a 2-year diploma, because I understand this is a long commitment, we offer also 4 short and focused micro-credential program, and those are solar PV, energy advisor, bioenergy and biofuel, and energy exchange. So those shorter trainings, they range from 2 to 6 months, and they're also offered online. So they're great short trainings that allow students to gain a good and solid understanding on specific technology and get a foot in the door in those industry. So most of the courses are in the micro-credentials are also transferable into the diploma program. So we basically take in some courses from a diploma program and develop complementary course to make it a micro-credential. And so there's potential for laddering into further education if that's what you wish to do later on. So if you're looking for upskilling or reskilling in the renewable energy field, our programs, they may be a great solution for you to get on the right path for a successful career transition. And so just want to reiterate that you don't need to sacrifice your lifestyle by taking our courses, and you can make it fit your schedule. We have various students who will take 1 or 2 courses at a time, and they follow the program how they can. Except for the micro credential, it's a little bit more intensive. You just go through the program within the 2 to 6 months, and then you're done, right? So it really depends what your goal is in the end. But so if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer your questions.
Well, Kathleen, what a fantastic message. I mean, I think Lakeland is really making a stamp in this area, and to provide the combination of micro-credentials and programs all online is an extraordinary opportunity. So, you know, that was a super overview. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Al, tell us a little bit more about InceptionU and what's cool and interesting about what you do and of value to the people attending today.
Yes, thank you, Cheryl. So InceptionU is a bit of a unique program. So in general terms, it's we help people pivot their careers from whatever they were doing before into becoming full stack software developers. We also have a full stack designer program for people who want to focus on design, and that could be based on web design and that, or it could be the design of products or other things. Now the interesting twist on our program is not only do we teach the skills to learn how to become in the example of the full stack software developer program, we teach you how to become a full stack developer, but we also include what we call essential skills. And that includes things like critical thinking, creative thinking, computational thinking, design thinking, visual thinking, and systems thinking. So the first part of our programs is about unlearning. So we try and help people remove themselves from the traditional way of learning in a linear way where you're taught something, you apply it a bit, and then you get tested on it, and then you get taught something else, and then you apply it. We work on a project-based learning perspective. So after the first initial part of the program where you're doing some unlearning and some self-discovery, you immediately are given a project, and that can be it's actually project criteria. So the project can be anything you want to build, but you have criteria. So it has to have these certain aspects. And at that point, you haven't learned anything yet. So it's very disruptive to people who have come out of a traditional learning environment like an engineering degree or something like that. But once you sort of get into it, you start to realize that it's a more meaningful learning experience because you're actually building something that has meaning to you. And so you're taught how to break something down into small little pieces, and then you go about the first little piece and you decide, okay, well, I have to figure out how to do this. So you get some education from us, as well as going out on the internet and tutorials and documentation on the internet that shows you how to do things. And then once you accomplish that little thing, you do the next one and the next one and the next one. And once all the little tiny pieces are done, you have an application. And it's really enlightening and rewarding to see the learners when they build their first application and they have to demo it. And they went from knowing very little to nothing about programming to building an application for real life. The first application is 1 month in length, and then the second application is a group project that's 2 months in length. And then the third application is sort of like our capstone project. We also bring in industry to recommend or to pitch ideas for the learner teams to take on. And then they have 3 months to build that last project. And when if you visit our YouTube channel, you can see the demo day videos of previous cohorts that have built some pretty amazing software. This most recent cohort, we actually had a group of learners that were in one of my groups who actually built a kind of like a scavenger hunt for to get people into the downtown core. It was called Rabbit Hole. And so we were on global television talking about our project, and it's pretty exciting when people are building these real meaningful projects that they actually have some sort of passion behind it. And really, learning is about passion. If you have curiosity and passion, you can do anything.
Cool. I mean, I love the combination of the iterative approach and, like you said, unlearning before learning, and then the opportunity to, develop something that you're passionate about and bringing industry in to pitch it. I may sign up, Al, so look for my application. Thank you so much. Bimal, tell us more about what you do at Geologic.
Absolutely. So first of all, Geologic's been a big part of the Canadian energy industry for years and years. You may not know the overall parent, but you would probably have come across our brand. So we're the largest oil and gas news and media organization in the country. So we have products like the Daily Oil Bulletin. Okay. Our parent at one point was the June Warren Nichols Energy Group. So JWN, which is a bit of for those in the industry, you would have come across one of our publications in Oil Week at some point. Even if you're not in the industry, you would have seen that in a lobby somewhere. And we also were very, very deep in the data space with a few of our data brands. So people would have perhaps used products such as GeoScout, for example, in terms of their day-to-day workflow as they're trying to develop oil and gas assets, or CanOils, which is one of our databases, or Evaluate Energy, which is another one of our Canadian and global oil and gas databases. And we've always been in the data and information business. Over the last few years, we've been paying very close attention to the growing focus on sustainability, and the buzzword, not just in our industry, but across all industries, is an area called ESG, environmental, social, and governance. And this affects people in oil and gas and energy, but it's just as valid, when people are talking about your privacy rules with Facebook, I guess now called Meta, that's an ESG challenge focused much more on the social and governance side of their businesses. If you look at the energy sector, we've been under a ton of pressure, and you'd see an announcement almost every day, whether it's emissions, Indigenous relations, stakeholder relations, looking after our water. Certainly there's those climate pressures, and then all the areas that come across that climate, whether it's carbon capture and storage. There were some big announcements, if you read the news earlier this week, on hydrogen, as an example. And what we realized and recognized was that there was an information and knowledge gap. So we've done a couple things. On one end, our core data and intelligence businesses are covering this every day, whether it's in the news or whether it's some of the data sets associated with the environment. And what's more relevant for today's discussion is we realized through that process that there was a massive skills gap and a skills opportunity. And the workforce that the energy sector is going to need for the future is going to require professionals who truly understand environmental, social, and governance. And we launched Evaluate Energy ESG Learning earlier this year. We had piloted some concepts last year, but decided to go much bigger and global this year. And the idea is that it'll be your one-stop shop in the energy sector to help you with a whole range of things you need to be successful. There's courses on ESG essentials and basics if you don't know what even the terminology is and how to speak the language, all the way to things like how do you measure emissions? How do you fix those emissions? We'll be expanding the pool of courses to include things like carbon capture and storage, hydrogen. It'll aim to range from all types of professionals, from people that need to know what they need to do in the field and how to deal with that leaky valve, all the way to the engineer that done geoscience for years and years and now needs to field problems around how do you store that carbon under the ground. So quite excited. We're very early down this path. We've built out a library, about 6 or 7 courses, and that'll be probably double or triple by the end of the year. And the goal is really to help professionals, whether you're just sort of dipping your toe into the industry or whether you've been there a long time, to have the tools they need to be successful in where the industry is going in the coming years.
And so I think you've raised some really, really good points because again, as I mentioned in the intro, Pat and I have been doing these workshops for going on 3 years now. And really the topics we started out with were transitions from oil and gas to other adjacent sectors. And we know based on your comments, Bimal, and of course, reading the news and listening to the news, that that's no longer the case, that the lines between oil and gas and other sectors are more blurry than they've ever been. And the oil and gas industry is really about sustainable energy development and ESG skills. And I know I said environment, sustainability, and governance, not environment, social, and governance, but ESG skills are one of those bolt-on skill areas that are needed for any oil and gas professional, regardless of the discipline. So I love that we have panelists that are focusing on bolt-on skills for oil and gas individuals who want to stay in oil and gas, but also for oil and gas professionals to shift, to leverage their knowledge and their technology skills and add to them to move into other areas such as technology development and renewables, such as Kathleen and Al have highlighted. And then Manpower with Heidi, they offer a myriad of programs that are free to anybody that wants to pursue them. So lots of resources out there. You all have a huge array of knowledge. And with that, I think it's time that we start the panel discussion. And I love where we ended up with Bimal, because that's a good segue into our first question. I'm going to ask everybody to respond to this first question. I think we'll start with Al, but let's go through what the question is first. So it's confusing for people. We hear both that there's lots of jobs out there and employers are crying for people, but we also know that people are looking for jobs and not necessarily getting them. So let us know what you understand, Al, what you're hearing from employers. What is it they need and want now that provides some insights into the people attending the workshop today?
Thank you, Cheryl. Well, first thing I want to mention is that, and many people may have heard this statistic before, but they say that 85% of jobs are never posted online. So if you think about that, give that a thought for a second. If you're just applying for jobs online, you're competing with everyone who's looking for a job for 15% of the jobs that are available. So you need to make sure that you're getting out there and you're getting to know people and you're networking and learning what other opportunities are out there. So aside from that, one of the things that we're learning from, or I've learned anyway from my experience in Tech Careers and Lighthouse Labs and now in InceptionU, because in all three of those programs, I've had a very solid opportunity to speak to employers about hiring the people that come out of these programs. And what I'm seeing is that they're looking for, well, it's a mix. A portion of them are looking for people with a bunch of experience and skills. And obviously, as we all know, that can be very difficult. If you're looking at, for example, senior level development staff, those senior level developers, because of the pandemic specifically, can now work remotely anywhere in the world. So a company that's trying to hire a senior in Calgary is competing with salaries from the UK and Silicon Valley and Texas, and those salaries can be like mind-blowing. So there has to be another option. And so these skill development programs, these boot camp programs and stuff, are giving people the opportunity to transition their skills into software development, as an example. And all we need is the opportunity to have companies consider bringing on junior developers and not always just looking for seniors. But one of the things that I've experienced talking to employers for a number of years now is they're looking for a culture fit first and foremost. And so if you are focused 100% on technology or whatever your platform is, but you don't have the ability to talk to people and you don't have that social ability to fit in, you're going to have a very difficult time. And so you may ace the technical part of the interview, but then when you're talking to the HR people and they're trying to see if you're going to be a fit in their culture, they're going to be like, not that one. So it's really, really important. And I think in all of the programs, there's an aspect that's above the technology. There's an aspect of teaching those other skills that make you a valuable employee to everybody. So I think that's the point I'd like to make there.
I should take myself off of mute before I talk. Yeah, super, Al. And I'm glad you brought up the idea of culture fit, because that's something that Pat and I talk about in our workshops. And we also, in a few minutes, will be talking about soft skills. So I appreciate that. So Kathleen, tell us a little bit about what you're hearing from employers that support the development of your program. What are they looking for these days?
Thank you, Cheryl. So most industries now they have developed a sustainability plan. And part of that plan, it usually involves inclusion of some type of renewable energy technology. So it's still an emerging job market, but it's coming. We starting to see this more and more. So even within conventional energy organizations, we see this happening right now, this transition and this development. So far we see, like as currently we see lots of demand in the solar industry as far as solar installers are in really high demand right now. So those skills are there's so much development going on. And so electricians who actually have solar training is actually even a level higher right now. In the energy exchange industry, employers are looking for people, and that includes like energy exchange in geothermal, but in HVAC technicians and engineers, those people, like the employers are looking for people who can combine various renewable energy systems together and conventional energy systems. So most technicians and engineers, they don't know about all the options that are available and how to integrate those various systems. So this is and how to the best energy and cost savings. They don't know how to calculate it and how to make a business case out of it. So this is something that's in demand right now. People who understand integration and how to make those business case and how to integrate. And it's always like case by case. There's no one solution fits all. So people who can understand their systems and how to integrate them on a case by case basis, I think is something that is in demand right now. In the biogas, biomass, and biodiesel industry, there's so much developments, and it's such a wide industry that encompasses so many different technologies. So with the new hydrogen development in Alberta, there's going to be lots of demands on that too. So people who have a working knowledge about renewable natural gas and how it's produced will be, I think, will have an edge on that too. People who understand the logistics of the supply chain and how to procure feedstock, the value of feedstock, how to calculate that. As Bimal mentioned, the emission calculations and carbon accounting are on the, from my perspective, on the agricultural side, seems to be like a really hot topic right now. And also on the municipal side of things, the logistics on municipal waste is something that's under development, and there's a lot of changes coming on that side of things. There's going to be development and people who have knowledge of the logistics of that as well. Municipalities are starting to making changes on how they process municipal waste. As far as the certified energy advisors, they're really high demand for energy advisors right now. This is service organizations that they have a hard time finding qualified people that can perform energy audits. They look for people who have good building science knowledge, not just for new constructions, but also on buildings that were constructed in the past some while ago and how they were constructed. So this knowledge with how to perform energy audit matched together is a very interesting set of skills, right, in the industry for that side. And yeah, and people who can work independently and who are very concise is very important in that field as well.
So what I'm taking away from this, Kathleen, I'm trying to tune my ears to where oil and gas professionals have opportunities to transition. And I heard what I liked what I heard, because it's not simply about moving from oil and gas into solar or wind. You talked more about combined energy systems and the integration of the use of energy applied to industrial projects, or as well as municipalities and commercial projects. And if anybody out there has not heard about the energy advisor role, I would encourage you to look it up, because that is an emerging occupation that is affecting sectors across the board. Thank you very much, Kathleen.
Yeah. I just wanted to add also, as oil and gas is diversifying, they're starting to develop those divisions as well. So it's also related to oil and gas. If you add that to your set of skills, I think this is something that is a very valuable thing. So yeah, I think it's a very important, and like you said, those lines are blurred. So
Great, thank you. Bimal, so what are you hearing from employers, and based on what you're hearing, why was the ESG learning program so important? If you could connect the dots with us us on that.
Absolutely. So I would say that, I think one of the drivers behind forums like these and, some of the previous ones that have been done have really been focused on an industry that was in a really tough patch. And I would view the 2015 to 2022 as one of the many cyclical low points of the industry. We got hit with a big commodity crunch, low oil prices and gas prices. And then just as we thought we were going to pop our head above water, we jumped into a pandemic, which, as recently as this time in 2020, we were all locked at home and oil prices went negative for a short period of time, and which is just incredible. And I think what we're hearing from employers now is that, the idea that the industry was finished forever was a bit of an overstatement. And the statement that boom times are now back, we're at 100 something plus dollar oil, is also a bit of an overstatement. And I think it's important for us just to have a little bit of balance. You know, what we're seeing from employers is they're absolutely going to continue to hire and grow, and you're hearing those announcements every day. But the way the growth is going to happen is going to be very, very different. This is not the same world. It's not the same energy industry that it was 20 years ago. There's massive environmental questions out there. There's no question about that. But I think, especially the last 6 or 7 weeks, with the just a terrible war in Ukraine, I think we're beginning to understand the importance of energy security, energy supply diversity. The fact that we're going to be continually dependent on these types of energy systems for many years to come. And I think the industry has responded in some really interesting and creative ways, which is to say, what if we were able to produce a product like hydrogen, which may come from an oil and gas or hydrocarbon supply chain, but we've managed to clean it up, get that carbon dioxide into the ground instead of the atmosphere, and perhaps there's a future for the industry that revolves around hydrogen, as an example. There's some very, very big announcements this week. And what we were realizing as a part of this, as a data provider and as a news provider, we were hearing that the industry needs a whole set of different skills. And some of those skills are the ones that we're going to be training around ESG, either the technical skills required to be successful or the broader just ability to understand what ESG means and where you go with it. But I think I'd want to go back to some of the stuff that was spoken about earlier by Al, that high degree of tolerance for ambiguity, the ability to solve problems, the ability to understand that we're entering a very ambiguous time, and your ability to be able to pivot and understand and recognize that there's going to be new opportunities that emerge 3 years from now that we aren't even talking about today, in this very industry of energy and oil and gas. And so I think it's just being able to have that ability to be flexible and nimble. People are not going to be training on something today in a micro-credential and working with that same technical skill 20 years from now. You know, it's going to be a very, very different world that we're in. The industry is very much never been healthier. It's never been more dynamic from a career perspective. I think we're in for a very, very exciting next 10 to 20 years.
And to me, I find this really, really interesting how many of you are focusing on soft skills. Now, that was part of our plan. So, you know, obviously we planted that idea, but my observation is that in the past, and I've been working around the oil and gas industry for decades, really, but in the past, employers reference soft skills, but really when push came to shove, it was about the technical skills, and people who were highly and technically adept got the jobs, stayed in the jobs, regardless of the soft skills. That is not the case anymore. I mean, Kathleen talked about more diverse supply chains, which means different sectors are working with the energy industry to deliver the products. And that means different sizes of companies with entrepreneurs. And it is just that collaborative ecosystem is just taking more and more from people. So I think the message I'm taking, and sorry, Heidi, I have not forgotten about you, but I think you're perfect to close out this section. But I think what I'm hearing is that people need to get really, really close to the soft skills they have and exploit them, develop them, but also understand what soft skills they need to develop. So stay tuned. We'll talk about those a little bit more. But just to remind you about the question, since it's been a while since I asked it, we've heard from everybody who's talked about the needs of employers. BML focused specifically on his experience based on the data and the publications that he works with, and what's going on in the oil and gas industry, and how quickly that's changing and how exciting that is and what the oil and gas industry needs. I want to shift to Heidi, who's working with a diversity of sectors. And I know your background, Heidi, I think I missed it. I know your background is as both an educator and a human resources professional before joining Manpower. And I know that means that you're accustomed to working with employers and reading the environment. But in developing your programs at Manpower to meet the needs that are out there, what are employers telling you that they need? Please add your perspective on that.
Yes, yeah. So, so I agree completely with everything that's been said so far. It's just so in alignment with everything that we're hearing from the employers that we support. The main part that we hear from employers is around the soft skills, or as I like to call them, the workplace essential skills. They're essential skills now. Employers are telling us that they're prepared to provide technical training. They know that technical skills can be learned, but what they're looking for in their interview processes and in their screening process is really the culture fit, which really comes down to, the essential skills, the soft skills, the ability to relate to the social environment that they're working within, the values of the organization. We also hear a lot from employers about how individuals can add value to their organization and solve problems. So problem solving being a skill, but also being able to present themselves as someone who can solve their business's problems. That's what they're looking to hire for. They have a problem they want to fix, and they want to hire someone to fix that problem. So with that comes a strong business acumen. We hear employers talking a lot about, we want them to understand that their role is contributing to the business overall, and how is that impacting the success of the organization, especially when we work a lot with startup organizations and smaller companies. With our programs, and Al would be very familiar with these as well. They're really all about, how can you help us grow our business? And that means solving our problems, coming up with new ideas, being agile, not being afraid to make mistakes and learn from those mistakes. And with that, being able to identify with the vision and values of what that company is trying to achieve. So we work across all different sectors, but that's something that we're hearing a lot. And when it comes to our staffing part of our organization, I can tell you that they're feeling the pain of a talent shortage. They get requests from businesses for roles that are very much, like in a perfect world kind of a role, and yes, they can go to external markets now with the ability to work virtually, but that's highly competitive, and the salaries are going to be extremely high. So looking at individuals who are willing to learn on the job and grow, there's some specific skill sets that I know I've been hearing a lot about: systems thinking, being able to there's going to be demand in, I'll talk about that a little more later, but there's going to be a lot of demand in those areas as new projects are coming out. But being able to learn new software, being highly digitally literate, you need to understand how to work in a cloud environment, because all companies are moving into the cloud space. So digital literacy is the bar has been raised in that regard, I believe, and individuals, it's just taken for granted that you need to know how to work in a virtual environment. You need to be productive in a virtual environment, but you also need to be willing to work on site as needed. I know that we see some individuals who are refusing to work on site. Well, that's going to also limit their opportunities. So flexibility, willingness to work in new environments, and being very comfortable with technology and learning technology quickly, I would say, are the biggest ones. Yeah.
Interesting, because you answered a question that surfaced in my mind about the impact of the work modality at home, in the office, hybrid. And again, that's not really about learning or training. That's unrelated to that. But you kind of linked it in a really good way, that companies feel they need to see people more directly and have people be flexible to be, in the field and be hands-on, as well as working virtually to be productive to solve their problems. Did I kind of summarize that correctly, Heidi?
Yeah, I think so. And it's really about recognizing that, especially when you're looking for employment, you need to understand what the employer needs from you as a candidate, as opposed to what you're hoping to get. So you may say, I want to work completely virtually, and that may be possible. But if the nature of the work that you want to do is going to involve some on-site component, we see a lot of that right now, people turning down jobs because there's an on-site component, and that's, you know, contributing to these folks not being able to land a job. You need to recognize what the business needs. And a lot of employers are trying to be as flexible as possible with offering hybrid solutions and different ways to work. But there's also the business realities that are there. So understanding what's likely going to be expected of you in the type of industry that you're looking at, the type of role that you're looking at, and having that flexibility and willingness, because ultimately you're there, as I said, to solve that business's problems.
Right. So, and that is interesting, because again, you sometimes hear that with the market and the demand for workers and skills, that the employee has the advantage to say what they want and tell the employer what they want and get it. So what I'm hearing you say is, using the sustainability word, that may not be sustainable over time, and that ultimately may not help businesses to see you as part of their solution solver team, solution providers. Another question, I'm switching it up a little bit, because we've covered sort of a variety of questions just through listening to your answers. So I'm going to insert a question that we didn't plan, because it strikes me that it's important. So we talked a lot about learning and training being available to people to go take micro-credentials and programs in a variety of ways. But Heidi also mentioned that employers are looking for people that learn on the job. Well, are employers also today willing to train as well on the job? What's happening in the landscape of workplace training? Does anybody have some insight or intelligence on that?
I do a little bit. I think there is absolutely an acknowledgement that that the employers have a responsibility for training and developing. I think though there's a bit of a evolution that's happening though. I think that what we're seeing, at least right now, is a more heavy commitment towards that for, you know, new talent out of universities and technical programs. So if you come out of the University of Calgary or a SAIT or University of Alberta or NAIT, they have the full capabilities to bring in they've got robust co-op programs and apprenticeships and everything else to be able to guide people through that. And I think they understand their talent pipeline and demographics within their organizations very well. I think the largest organizations are very, very well attuned to that. I think, however, that there still continues to be a fair bit of work required for the concept of the reskilling of the experienced worker. And there, I think there's a greater expectation that you're going to take ownership of your own career. So if you've worked 15 years in a oil and gas company, and you're sort of seeing the writing on the wall in terms of the area of focus you have, and you want to pivot somewhere else within the organization, I believe that these organizations, at least now that we're back on more stable economic footing, are willing to help fund that journey towards whatever you're trying to drive towards. But you're going to have to be the one that puts up your hand and says, this is where I think I want to be. This is what I want. This is the kind of development I need. And what I'm hearing is you're going to get an open ear to that, especially in the larger organizations that are operating in Canada. But what you need to do is take your own career into your own hands once you get to that sort of level.
Right. So I'm hearing that the experienced worker, such as, our participants today would be described that way, still needs to take ownership for their upskilling and not completely rely on an employer to provide that once they're hired. That the on-the-job training tends to be more focused on the new entrant out of school, the new
right, or direct skills. For example,
right.
we offer training for anyone who needs to use any of our data products.
Correct.
And we have a steady stream of professionals at all levels that come in and need to get a primer on GeoScout, to get up and running. But that's for individuals that are in that field, that are already working in geoscience or engineering and just need to get a little bit of knowledge on those tools. But this broader, bigger pivot, you're going to have to take your own career into your own hands.
Okay, well, now I'm assured that the topic of the webinar is useful to people to take ownership for upskilling, either while they're employed or outside of employment. So I think I'd like to shift to just a general question, and we've kind of been talking about it, but feel free to bring in your comments about how training has changed in the workplace. But the question is, what, broadly speaking, are the changes that you have seen to accommodate the needs in the environment, employer needs, the evolving energy ecosystem that has been very well described, recovering during COVID, reactions to energy supply and energy security. What have been the overall changes to training that those of us that came through traditional university programs need to be aware of and be searching for and looking for? So let's go to Al. Tell us what you feel have been the changes in training that have accommodated the needs of employers in the environment.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I think first of all, we have to separate, a standard trajectory. So you go to, junior high, high school, and then you go into post-secondary education. That's, still today is still fairly standard. Now, what we're mostly talking about on this panel is sort of upskilling and reskilling. So we'll talk about that specifically. And, depending on the career that you're trying to move towards, or the career within the company that you're currently working in that you want to upskill for, I think more and more companies and people in general are starting to understand that it's about learning the skill itself, not having a piece of paper that shows that you took something. I want to say 20 years ago, 15 years ago, a lot of times it was all based on certifications. And some people still have that mindset. And in the engineering world and some other worlds, there are still very important certifications. But when you talk about things like more along the technology line, and you talk about, what Bimal's talking with the ESG and the in my world, software development, and that, it's about, can you do the job? Do you have the skills to do the job? It doesn't matter whether you have a piece of paper or not. And in software development specifically, a lot of the job interviews have a technical component where they'll actually give you either a live problem that you need to solve on the keyboard right now in front of them, or they'll give you an assignment that you need to do over the weekend. And they want to see that you can actually do the job. Then they'll match that with the culture fit to see if you're going to be someone that they can have on board. And further to something that we were kind of talking about earlier, that culture fit is very important because, like as Heidi mentioned, skills can be learned, right? So if you have a basic understanding of, say, one programming language, or you have some good experience as doing some software development, it doesn't matter that you don't know the exact technology that company is using, because you can pick that up. If you're going to be a great culture fit and everybody's going to get along with you, and you obviously have problem solving skills and you're a smart cookie in the eyes of the people hiring you, they know that you'll be able to pick up whatever programming language or technologies that they have. So I think it's really in my personal opinion, if you're career transitioning or upskilling, going down a 4-year degree road is really not going to get you a lot of advantage. And one of the things that people will have heard me say before, if two people start at the exact same day, one goes into university for a 4-year degree and the other one goes into a 6-month boot camp. The person coming out of university may have a lot more theory and a lot more knowledge, and they may be able to demand a slightly higher wage than the person who came out of the boot camp. But the boot camp's been working in the industry for 3.5 years by the time the person gets out of university. Right. So they're already working in like, the 6-figure salary range when the person just they now come out of university with a $90,000 student loan. And yeah, they might get a little bit more money in their starting job, but they still have 3.5 years to catch up to the boot camp. So and especially if you've already got a degree, if you're already an oil and gas engineer, but now you want to pivot kind of out of oil and gas into something like software development, a 3-month program, a 3-month intensive boot camp program like Lighthouse Labs, or a 6-month boot camp like something from Manpower or something from InceptionU, or even some of the SAFE boot camps. That's a really quick way to literally add on to your existing skill set. And people have to remember that. A lot of people forget that their existing skill set is incredibly valuable. You may be doing something now that's completely different, but all those skills, all that experience working in a professional environment and problem solving and dealing with financial situations and other people, dealing with conflict, all those things that you've been doing all throughout your career are now add-ons to the fact that you're now a programmer, or you're now a security specialist, or you're whatever else you just learned as a boot camp grad.
Interesting. So it's not good enough to be able to express or convey well what you can do and convince somebody you can do it. Employers are now asking applicants to demonstrate it in a live and applied way. That is absolutely fascinating. Kathleen, same question, just from Lakeland's perspective, and your programs are different than those that Al is talking about. So what is your view about how training has changed? For one thing, I'm astonished that a solar installer can basically learn the skills online. That's one thing that astonishes me, that so many of your programs are online. So tell me the journey that you've gone through at Lakeland with respect to changing the training to meet the needs of employers or the environment.
So I was just going to say, online learning actually with the arrival, like with COVID situation, has kind of expanded so much, and the learning tools have also expanded a lot. And so the online courses are now more engaging, and they're offering like more equivalent experience than face-to-face. I just want to point that out, that online learning sometimes has, it really depends how it's done, but when it's done well, it can really be equivalent to a face-to-face. So with that in mind, it offers such a wider possibilities for students to access so many more trainings, even if it's outside of your geographical area. But so basically, I think shorter trainings, as Al has mentioned, are definitely on the rise, and I agree with what he said. Like, if you want to change career and reskill, a shorter training will probably get you there in a better way. There's so much skills that are transferable. Of course, in the renewable energy field, there's some safety aspects that you really need to have formal training to be able to operate in those fields, like the design aspects, and you really need to get those technical skills down, learned and learn good basics. But let's all agree that the work experience, once you get those necessary basic skills to work in that technical field, you really need to get that work experience, and your soft skills will really get you a long way. So I think it's been said before, but I agree. Like, it's so important that you work on that as well, and just be able to recognize and pinpoint what are those skills that I've learned on the job, what are the technical skills that I can add to reskill, add that to my resume, match it together. And, you know, you can get a really interesting set of skills, even though sometimes it's not all formal education. There's so much more education that is not formal that people fail to recognize. It's so important to keep that in mind. And to, I guess, to conclude, there's like post-secondary institutions have so many options for continuing education, and those are not necessarily granting you any type of recognition or credential, but there's like still people are interested in, and it's so important to keep going with the continuing education. There's various options that are offered and even outside of accredited post-secondary, and it's whatever works best for your needs, and to keep that on top of mind, that you to keep adding to your education and find the education and the continuing education that you need to fulfill those gaps. Identify the gaps that you have to reskill in the industry where you want to go. Find the training that you need, and focus also on your soft skills. And I think you're going to really get good chances at you know, moving on. And what else I was just going to say about that, there was something about anyways, I had something on top of mind about that. If it comes back later, I'll let you know. But yeah,
no worries. But I like what you said. A couple of things. Identify the sector, or you know, your target, where you want to go, and then identify the gaps to get there. And so that is part of it. While I'm hearing similarities in needs across sectors, there are some differences in what sectors are looking for with respect to technical skills and how to apply them. But what I found very interesting, coming from a formal educational institution, you also said, like Al did, that it's not necessarily about a credential, and that employers are looking for ways to hire people that can demonstrate they can do the things, as Heidi mentioned, that solve their business problems and add value. And again, being in this world and in this business for a long time, we would not have heard that from a formal post-secondary education institution even 5 years ago. That's my observation.
Well, I hope I didn't make a mistake.
This is being recorded, so it doesn't matter. It's too late.
I was just going to say, actually, it's happening as we speak. Like, there's people, and that's what I wanted to mention as well. There's some people like joining a program, and they will actually cherry pick the courses that fulfills their needs. And they won't necessarily finish the whole program because they've gained what they wanted to gain. And they don't necessarily care. Like, I mean, we don't encourage it, but I mean, we see it happening, and we understand that it's fulfilling a need. So we allow that.
It's okay to be a dropout, is what I'm hearing. So I put words in your mouth, and I do want to say that I did not hear that certifications and degrees are no longer important. None of you said that.
No.
But you said that it's changed, that they're important, but also it's skills learned in a variety of ways, which may or may not involve a certificate. So I'm going to round out this question with Bimal. You might have already touched on these things, but I'll ask it and see what you have to add. Any other insights that you have? I mean, your business is business intelligence. So what other insights do you have about how training has changed to meet the needs of the environment? Anything to add that hasn't already been said?
You know, I think that it's an excellent panel. I've learned lots today. You know, there's so much going on. The only thing I would just speak of a little bit more broadly is, I happen to be with an organization that is focused on Alberta's largest industry, which is, the oil and gas industry, and, it tends to suck all the oxygen out of the room. And one thing that we have seen and noticed a lot, just in terms of some of the talent things we're hearing right now, is for the first time, we're seeing competition for talent where the winner isn't the oil and gas industry. There's an incredible tech sector in the city and in the province, There's some innovative things happening on the ag side. There's some innovative things happening in consumer products. And you know, I think for people, wherever they are in their career, you know, what I would say is when I hear about it with an eye on the energy sector, it's generally, you know, spoken of as a negative, which is, okay, we're having a hard time finding the people and talent we need in specific areas. And it's those other industries that are taking those people. But, you know, I wanted to flip the conversation for this panel, which is, you know, if you are in the market today, there's a tremendous number of opportunities, perhaps, that people don't give the province enough credit for from a diversification perspective. And, you know, I think, you know, you have more choices than the energy sector. And I think the energy sector is responding by trying to become the employers of choice and actually going out there and making sure that they can put their best foot forward. So that would be the only thing I would top up on that today.
And that is really interesting that the competitive environment is changing and the oil and gas industry is working to be an employer of choice, but they may not be the employer of choice for some people who are perhaps looking for a different environment. But the bottom line is there's choice, there's options and there's choice, which is again, tremendous given what we've been through in the last few years. So I'm going to shift to that topic of soft skills, and I want to thank Heidi, I think, who used the term workplace essential skills, because I've always hated the term soft skills. It's almost like a but you also need soft skills as an afterthought, and it's less than hard skills. Well, I said but, and we do want to talk about what those workplace essential skills are. So we hear from employers that it's not just about what you can do, but also how you do it. And what I'm interested in is a little bit about, well, you've already said what they are. So the key focus of the question is, how do you build in workplace essential skills into a training program, into a learning program? I mean, how do I work on my collaborative skills when I'm taking online training as an example? So how do you actually do it as professionals in the learning environment? So Heidi, what is the approach to that? If you could please expand on that from your knowledge.
Yes, yeah. So that is something that is really key to any training program. If you are looking into training, I do believe that many training providers include these softer skills into their training delivery. And Al had mentioned, and Kathleen as well, even if it's in an online environment, what we do with our training programs is we integrate it, we weave it throughout the curriculum. That's the best way, I believe, to teach those soft skills, is through application and practice. You need to practice using those skills. And so, you know, in your project teamwork and specifically identifying what does collaboration mean, helping the students to do that and then to apply it in a project in a real world setting. So as much as possible, those skills should be integrated into, just embedded in the curriculum as a whole, and identified and discussed so that they know what it is that the expectations are, but then practicing that throughout their training. And so if you are doing a more online based learning, seeking out those opportunities as well, collaborating in whatever setting you can, and putting into practice those skills as you go through your learning.
And it's interesting that you talk about seeking out the opportunities as a learner, because from a person that attends a lot of webinars, that's very tough. Now, a webinar isn't the same as a training program, but there is a certain passivity involved in being on the other side of a screen. So what I'm hearing you say is, pay attention to how those soft skills are being integrated into the program, and understand that they're important, and that as a learner, it's absolutely essential that you engage to be able to learn them and address them. So I love that answer. Kathleen, again, sorry, traditional, untraditional post-secondary institution, which I think you are. How do you embed soft skills into your programs? Do you have some insights into that?
Yes, of course. So even though our trainings are technical and online, they are instructors led. So some of our courses are project based. And so by being project based, it doesn't only address technical skills, but it also develop the soft skills required to build a project, use the students' critical thinking. And so this transfers into creative solution finding into the workplace. So those are like very transferable skills that are taught and weaved into our courses as well. Also, there's going to be a level of accountability expected from the instructors. That's also a very important workplace skills, accountability and on assignments and completing work on time, deadlines, and following through on commitments. Those are important soft skills that are transferable as well. So there's a level of expectations from the instructors towards the students, and students are often, they are expected to participate in group discussions, make professional presentations. Those are also important soft skills that will be used in their workplace. And so also the students they have to consider various stakeholders as well when they build a project within a course. And that's a very important aspect as well when you're in the workplace, to consider various stakeholders in any given project that you're going to be involved with. And that transfers into real life scenarios. And if I just go into like just outside the program, but just as Lakeland College as a whole, we have like guest speakers, talking about Indigenous culture, stress management sessions, mindfulness, counselor. I can like go on, job fair, resume building workshops, and public speaking, various clubs. So I mean, all of that. If students want to join those extracurricular activity, they can access so much more. And we also have like an online system that provides hundreds of online training, going from Excel, how to learn like basic Excel to advanced Excel to conflict resolution to marketing tips and leadership skills. So there's so many more resources that students can on their own go out and take, as part of, being a student. There's many opportunities that are offered. And if they just want to stick to the course, they're still going to get, some sort of soft skill out of that.
Right. Super. Al or Bimal, I mean, we didn't plan for you to answer in particular, but do you have anything you want to add about how soft skills are integrated into learning or training, just to round this out?
Just one nuance around this, because I think you mentioned one thing about Cheryl earlier around, the importance of soft skills are there. You also need those hard skills, and I think it's that combination. But in a competitive work environment where there may be more than one candidate with the hard skills, the soft skills absolutely become the key differentiator. And certainly if you're looking for a role where you want to start somewhere and then seeking out advancement, advancement is absolutely correlated with those soft skills: ability to work with others, tolerance for ambiguity, ability to communicate effectively, all of those things. And it's table stakes today. It's the ability to be able to do all of those things. Doesn't reduce the need. A person with outstanding soft skills but without actual domain knowledge is still going to be at a disadvantage. But today you simply need to show up with more. And it's an expectation, and the people that have it can really do well.
I like how you conveyed it as a competitive edge, not only to get the job, but to advance. I'll stop there unless Al, you want to jump in. I think that was a great way to round it out.
Yeah, I think, touched on a couple of points I wanted to make, but I do want to add that, one of the things that people really don't consider, and I mentioned this early on, is that concept of networking, that concept of being able, and Lakeland talks about a public speaking class. I would encourage every student at Lakeland to take that class, because that's super, super important. And even if you're a natural introvert like I am, you can learn to be extroverted when you need to. And yes, you do need to go home and have a nap afterwards to recover. But the fact of the matter is that it's those public skills, that ability to speak out. You know, when I always encourage our students, when someone says, okay, who wants to be first, that you throw your hand up. Like, instead of everybody just sitting there hoping someone else will go first, be that one that goes, I'll do it, you know. And those skills are almost more important than learning all the technical skills. I mean, obviously the job entails you knowing technical skills, but being that person, and to twist a little on what Bimal was saying, there's this concept of intrapreneurs. And so when you're working in a company, you know, you can just choose to just keep doing your job, or you can look around and see things that need to be fixed and take it upon yourself to get out there and say, you know what, I'm gonna see what I can do about fixing this and changing this. And that's sort of, you're staying within your company, but you're still kind of have an entrepreneurial mindset. And that goes, you know, unless the company's got some really weird management, that should go over very, very well, showing that you're a natural leader and you want to make change. So that's what I wanted to add.
I like that concept of the entrepreneurial mindset, even if you're not in an entrepreneurial organization or role. And it goes back to something Heidi said about bringing value to the company. So a value added mindset, really important. So those are excellent points. So we've got about 10 minutes left. And I think what we'll do is just ask each of you to speak, but shift your thoughts, put on your advisory cap. Al, you're in a coffee shop. So if Al, it's actually not a very busy coffee shop, which is kind of weird, but I know that's just a screenshot. But you're in a coffee shop and you've been asked for a meeting with one of the people in the webinar. And they've asked you the question, what do I need to do? What are the things that I can do to prepare myself to approach learning, to approach a career transition or a career shift, to be ready for the future? So I'm asking you in this coffee meeting, what advice do you have for me about what ownership and responsibility or actions that I might take that I need to do? Heidi, are you comfortable answering this question first?
Sure, yes. Yeah, so I actually get requested for these a lot. So I want to put it out there that anyone can reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm always happy to share advice and thoughts about, you know, career transition and how to approach it. And I think that looking for employment in this new world is a skill set in itself. So reach out to those who can help you with those skills. Look for programs. There are lots of programs out there offered, fully funded by the government, career development programs. You know, you can even connect with a career coach, seek out mentors in the areas that you're looking to get into. And know what your goal is. Where do you see yourself going? Where do you want to transition? Are you wanting to stay in your current sector and just, reskill and pivot slightly within the industry? Or are you looking for a complete change? Knowing what that means, doing your research, and really taking ownership of your career. And Bimal had mentioned that as well, that you know, it's you can never expect that the employers are going to do that for you. They're always going to seek the quickest, fastest way to fill their needs. And so it's on you as a job seeker to take ownership of that and seek out the information for yourself, identify where your gaps are, identify what your transferable skills are as well. Know what is a good value add. Even if you're changing industries, it's important to recognize that if you're a mechanical engineer with specific technical skill set, what is going to actually bring value to a construction company or something in a different sector? that they're not necessarily going to see. It makes you a unique candidate for them. You're uniquely positioned with your transferable skills to add value to their business needs. But they're not going to see that just from seeing your resume. So you need to reach out, you need to network, you need to connect with people, and you need to show that you are an expert in your own business proposition. You should know what your value is and have a value proposition ready to discuss with employers, get their interest, and show them that you can hit the ground running and meet their needs. And the learning is going to fall on your shoulders to take responsibility and ownership of that, and be specific. Don't waste, years of your life pursuing a degree. Look at those specific skill sets that you need for that target job and acquire those. That would be my advice to someone.
Excellent. Thank you. Al, somebody's finally walked into the coffee shop and they're there to talk to you. So they're a learner and they're asking you, what do I need to do as a learner, a job seeker, a transitioner, to be resilient, to be ready for the changes? What's your advice?
Thank you. And this is a fun question. I get to talk about this quite a bit. And, building on what Heidi said, which is a brilliant answer. The fact of the matter is that when I look back at all the programs I've been a part of and all the people that have graduated from all the cohorts I've got lots of gray hair. But the fact of the matter is, the ones that were picked up like right away, the people that got jobs instantly weren't necessarily the people that had the best technical skills. I think of people who were always going out and above. I know one of the cohorts, I think it was 2 cohorts ago, we had a learner that decided on LinkedIn he was going to post every single day. He was going to post what he learned that day. And so every day he was posting, and his network just grew and grew and grew and grew and grew. And by the time the program was over, people were commenting on his thing, and it actually ended up bringing a whole bunch of people into our program, which was a nice little side benefit. But it's people like that who, they attend Rainforest Alberta events and they get out there networking, and they are out actually being a part of that culture and that community. So whatever it is that you're trying to become, make sure that you're already out. You're already in the user groups. You're already out there, getting to know people, building your network, because ultimately it's that skill set is going to be more powerful, not only finding a job, but when you're actually in the job, having that skill set to be able to be a leader and being able to go out there and make stuff happen. That's what's going to shine and give you a very successful career. And the people that sit around and expect everybody to give them everything they need to teach, just teach me what I need, just tell me what I got to do. Okay, what button do I got to push? Now let's do this. Okay, which job should I apply for? You can't just expect everybody to hand everything to you on a silver platter. You need to be going out there and figuring out what you need, talking to people, set up coffee meetings, get to know. One of the greatest pieces of advice that I've heard for people looking for jobs is actually getting to know people that already work there. So, find out. LinkedIn is such a great tool for us these days. You go to a company, you look in the company, you see people, you pick Calgary, you see who works there that live in Calgary, and you reach out and you connect to them, and you just say something simple like, I'm really fascinated by this company you work for. I'd love it if you could spare 15 minutes to have a coffee and just talk, or virtually have a coffee and talk about what it's like to work there. And then once you get to know a few people, getting a job there becomes a lot simpler, because you have internal people that are recommending you because they got to know you, they know your personality. So it's those people that are going to be incredibly successful. And the person that just takes a technical thing, is able to do the technical thing, and then they start applying for jobs online, is going to have a really, really difficult time these days.
Excellent. Couple of more minutes before we move to your question. So I'll ask Kathleen and then Bimal to add on to anything extra you'd like to say to supplement what we heard from Heidi and Al. Your advice to a learner on readying themselves. Kathleen.
I'm just going to expand a little bit on what Heidi and Al have already said, and just perhaps also volunteering is one of the greatest way of joining a network, expanding your networking, and try and focus on volunteering for organizations where you want to expand your network in, right? Like where your interest lies, and find those places, offer to volunteer, join organizations, attend networking events if you can, even if they're virtual or in person. Do what you can to join those networks that you want to expand on, and that's going to it's going to take time, and you really need to get yourself out there and outside of your comfort zone. If you're an introvert, it's double hard, but trust me, it's worth doing it in the end, and you're going to get more comfortable. There's always going to be people that you're going to connect more easily with, and other people that you don't, and that's okay. You're going to find your tribe at some point, and
Yeah.
people that you can relate to, and that also creates a network for you that you can bounce idea off, and later on, even when you find that maybe you won't find that dream job right away, but you might find that stepping stone. And while you're in that position, that network, it might help you also to progress into your career, and to get where you ultimately want to go. But sometimes, the entry level job might not be what you're looking for, but it might be worth trying it for a while, just so at least you got your foot in the door and you're in that industry. And so you can add that to your resume, and just see this as a stepping stone. Don't I'm not saying don't aim high. You can aim high, but don't be afraid to sometimes maybe just take a little bit of a, just a little bit of time to get where you want to get, and just be a little patient, especially when you're making a career transition, and then have faith. You're going to get there.
Yeah. Well, and so attitude is everything. If you've got the right attitude, then you're more opportunistic. Bimal, to close our panel discussion before we go to questions, your advice to a learner.
Well, it's hard to follow, be the last one, because you want to say everything else everyone else said. But I think what I'll do is I'll say the same thing they said, but slightly differently. When I've been advising, and I have these conversations all the time, what I ask people to do is, so often you'll hear people say, well, I got 100 resumes out last week. And it's a staggering number. And you take a step back and say, actually, what would happen if you only got 5 resumes out this week? But you take the time that went into all those Indeed applications, and you had those meetings that Al, Kathleen, and Heidi were talking about. So often you feel like you're so busy just trying to get applications out there, you're not actually doing the things that are going to get you the job. You need to have those conversations, perhaps ask for those information interviews, do that networking, do that volunteering. Sometimes it's don't go jump into looking for a job. It might be I'm just looking for more information about the industry, what skills I need, so you can go and figure out whether you do want to take that ESG course or something that's more data science. You're not going to know, so ask a few people and you'll get a better sense of it. And what you've got to do is think about what would life look like if I wasn't sending out hundreds of resumes a week, but instead 5 very selective ones to people I've met, part of that 85% of the jobs that aren't posted that you started off this whole thing with, Cheryl, and being able to go and be much more targeted. And what you'll find is your success rate will be a lot higher. You've got to invest that time, and it's awfully hard when you're seeing all those jobs you could apply to, but you've actually got to change your mindset quite a lot to be the most successful out there.
Well, this is tremendous. So you guys have provided some fantastic information, and I should add, Kathleen, Heidi, Bimal, and Al have all volunteered their time free of charge, which is extraordinary. But don't rest yet. Oh yeah, Al didn't realize. Sorry, Al, I'll buy you a coffee when I find that coffee shop. But do not relax yet, because now we get to the hard part, really. So these are the questions that have come in from the people attending the webinar. And I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint and turn it over to Pat, who will lead us through the questions. And as I said, she'll direct them as appropriate. So Pat, you're on with the Q&A session, please.
Fabulous. Thank you very much. And wow, I learned a lot. I have a few pages full of notes here. And so on just to add to my learning, and I'm sure the audience is feeling the same. One of the questions, and I'm going to direct this to Bimal, is, in the ESG sphere, we're getting a better sense of what the environmental kinds of metrics companies and industries are being sort of, held to account by. But the social side of things is still a little bit more ambiguous. And so can you maybe share, kind of what the social side of things are, and what kinds of candidates or domain knowledge is maybe, transitioning into some of those kinds of careers?
That's a fantastic question, Pat. I'm going to answer this in two ways, and I'll try to keep it short. So, because this is a really common question and really critical one. So, what I would say is every industry has ESG pressures. It just so happens that the oil and gas industry tends to get a far more scrutiny around the E side of it, and for good reason. Climate change is a big problem, and we play a major role in that. And of course, the attention is going to be there. What we're seeing right now, though, is there's a growing shift, especially in the last 2 months with what's going on in Ukraine, that there's a bit of a rebalancing around the need to look at the S side of things. What kind of countries do you want to get your oil and gas from? If you're going to continue to use the product, perhaps those are more important. And people have been talking about this for a very long time, but really we're sort of ignoring this particular dynamic. Lots of ESG mutual funds were owning Russian stocks, not Canadian oil and gas stocks, as an example. And there were headlines about that a few weeks ago. What I'm describing there is a bit of a shift. It's a new concept, it's a new area, and we're starting to see a little bit of a evolution or rebalancing of the overall weightings between E, S, and G. Now, if I speak, what I just said is not particularly actionable in a jobs forum. Most of us are not going to be asked about our geopolitical position on most things. What I would say, though, is S plays a critical role in the Canadian oil and gas industry. Every day you're going to hear something about stakeholder engagement, about engaging audiences in Ontario and Vancouver and also in the country to build a coalition around developing resources. Indigenous engagement and Indigenous reconciliation is paramount to the success of not just our industry, but also reconciliation with Indigenous peoples in this country. And that is a massive S issue. And we've offered a course on stakeholder relations. Last year, we're working with partners right now to find content that would be appropriate for Indigenous engagement. But certainly, and our courses cover off some of the issues that we're seeing on the S side, whether it's community engagement or Indigenous. And you're going to see that as an increasingly important issue. It's already a critical issue, and the talent and the needs of people that can help and be successful there it's such an important area.
Cool. Thank you very much. Yeah. And emerging, one of the things that sort of strikes me is when we have an emerging sort of set of occupations or, knowledge sets, it kind of levels the playing field, right? Like you're not necessarily competing with a whole bunch of people that are already trained in doing this because it is emerging, and it certainly provides an opportunity across the board. Another question that came up, and I'm gonna start by, asking Al this question because he was the first to bring it up, but the whole panel has addressed the question beautifully about how do you build those soft skills, workplace essential skills, that kind of stuff that we know industry and companies are looking for. But the question is more putting, sort of what you understand employers are doing. Can you provide the audience any insights into how employers are actually measuring or assessing whether or not you have those soft skills or are a good cultural fit that people can kind of prepare themselves for?
Great, great question. I'm not sure if I have the best answer, but what I will say is that I don't think they've changed their process to determine whether you have those skills. I think that's one of the things that's been consistent for a very, very long time. When you go to certain job interviews, they have sort of like this set of questions, and I forget the term they use for it, but there's a sort of a structure to the way the questions, and they're kind of standard for everybody they interview. Those questions are designed to determine whether you have a growth mindset and whether you have, people skills and how you deal with conflict and stuff like that. So a lot of those questions that are asked in an interview that are standard interview questions are literally to figure out whether you have that kind of a mindset to be able to fit into the company. Then the general culture fit thing, which is what they're really looking for these days, more so than they have in the past, is it's very specific to each company. So they know what their culture is like, and they're trying to, in communicating with you, they're trying to see if you would fit in, like how you answer your questions and that kind of thing. So,
which really speaks to, in order to prepare for an interview, you need to do your research on
Absolutely.
that company and what might be their culture. And so that, well, one, you want to assess whether or not that's a good culture fit for you as well, because that's key to success. But in order to prepare for interviews, Heidi, I'll maybe ask you, a similar question or anything you want to add to Al, just, kind of given the broad scope of what Manpower is involved in.
Yeah, well, I absolutely agree with what Al said. It's been in practice for a long time, and it's called behavioral interview questions, where you're asked to provide a specific example of when you demonstrated a specific competency. So that's usually the way of assessing those soft skills, in providing examples of a situation where you demonstrated that skill. So that's still very common. I've seen, assessment tools that companies may use to have you answer questions that is going to reveal more of a psychometric of what your soft skills and work styles and work preferences and all those kinds of things. Those can also help employers to determine a cultural fit if they're using some of those assessment tools. And a lot of companies that really care about that, they may include that as part of their interview process, is sending out those assessments in advance. So I think that, assessments are something that you may see more and more in terms of that culture fit, but how you present in the interview, being able to respond to what your thoughts about the company culture is, are also going to be indicators to them that you've done the research. You also care about cultural fit for yourself, and the types of questions that you ask about the role are all kind of, there is no kind of black and white way to prepare for that, other than just understanding yourself, knowing what kind of culture you want to work in, and making sure you're applying to companies that fit for you as well. Great. Would be my suggestion.
Thank you very much. Thanks. And I'll just remind people, because there are some questions coming in, you will get a package on sort of our panelists and the programs they offer and that kind of stuff. So, if you have a specific question about a particular program or that kind of stuff, we're hoping that the information package that will circulate after the webinar will help you do that. And do your own kind of market research around some of those specifics. One of the questions that sort of comes to mind for me, Kathleen, in listening to what Lakeland College is offering, is you really are sort of in some ways integrating industries and bringing companies together in an industries in an integrated kind of way, and offering courses that would be of value across a number of industries. So, whether it be agriculture, construction, or, oil and gas or renewables, what's your sense of industry's perspective on seeing that, transferability across the different sectors, and the value of looking at people with maybe, coming to the table with different different domain knowledge from a different sector?
I'm sorry, that's a very long question. I'm just, just a little bit. So you'd like to know,
I guess,
yes.
just to summarize it, are you seeing the shift on industry in terms of, accepting those transferable skills, in a more, because there's more integration across some of the industries?
From the industry perspective, I think what has been mentioned during this webinar about soft skills is literally like once the employer has seen your resume, they have some baseline skills where they're gonna look at, and that's from my perspective, and that's from what I heard from advisory committee. They're going to make sure the first skimming is just making sure you got qualifications, but then after that, it definitely goes down to your soft skills. So whether, like, it really depends, what your background is too. We see like engineers coming through a program, and so there's such a different level of background that I think it really depends, right? It's such a wide industry. Like we're talking from solar to geo exchange, which is so different, and where like maybe HVAC is bringing it all together, and trying to integrate. And you've got solar companies who are only looking for mostly solar to achieve all the projects that they're achieving. So it really depends on like what, and there's such different industries, so it really depends of a student's background prior to what they did, or if they didn't have like prior education or prior professional experience, if they're right off of high school, it definitely gets them a foot in the door. So I guess all of that to say, I think there's a potential from the industry perspective. They're happy with our offering. They think it's providing enough skills, applied skills, to get our graduates a foot in the door in whichever industry.
Perfect.
I hope that answered the question.
Absolutely. That, you certainly sounds like it's offering, skill development that's valued across industries. And even though there are some specific requirements by specific industries, really sounds like, it goes back to, another theme of this panel is, kind of do your homework, take advantage of some of those services that are out there around career planning, and, where do you want to go? Where's, what might be an opportunity or a pathway you'd like to take that aligns with, your values and that kind of stuff. And with that as a footing, being able to, to then target what kinds of training you want to do. And you all offer such wide variety, but again, kind of short, affordable, but deep in terms of skill development and knowledge development in order to, to make that transition. I think, just to kind of wrap up, one of the things that I've really taken away from this panel is just, again, that reinforcement of, the need for ongoing and lifelong learning. I think we've probably all heard it throughout our careers, but it just seems to have a little bit of a different flavor these days, given some of the things that you've already, covered off in terms of, the whole economy is in transition. We're looking to new technologies, new way of doing things in order to be sustainable, specific industries, specific companies, as well as our economy as a whole. And I think, I would hope that some of this conversation, for our audience in particular, has just kind of normalized that, being a lifelong learner, looking out for training opportunities and learning opportunities is actually a strength. It's going to help you in terms of building a resilient career. Whereas I think that's a mind shift that a lot of us need to make, that it's not a deficit. You aren't trying to fill a deficit just because you're taking training, or it's not a weakness that you need to take training. It in fact is the way you're going to build a resilient career in, these times where there does remain still uncertainty and ambiguity. So I want to thank you so much for participating in the panel. I want to thank all of our participants. I'm going to spend just a couple of minutes on closing. One, we promised that we would sort of take a look at funding opportunities that might be available to people that are considering, learning opportunities or training opportunities. And so this will be, this is in the package that we'll provide you, but certainly there are a lot of opportunities for accessing funding to perhaps support your training. And I think what we tried to do really in pulling this panel together is, to purposefully look at opportunities that are out there that are short, but very impactful, and at the end of the day, quite affordable. In fact, some are free. I mean, we heard that. And so this is, and the other thing I guess I would say around funding is, because even though there are a variety of funding opportunities available, kind of the criteria around eligibility and that kind of stuff can be very different. So this is a bit of a primer in order for you to take a look at, where you might fit in, how might some of these training opportunities fit for where you're headed. This is something else you can work with, if you happen to be working with a career practitioner or an employment counselor around just your career planning in general. This is something you can talk to them about in terms of, are there programs that are free that will help me address my, ongoing learning needs, or what might be some of the funding opportunities available. I would just say this, we've kind of categorized these as resources for learners. So these might be funding opportunities that learners can apply for. This first one, Alberta at Work, Cheryl shared a little bit about this. This is a pretty recent announcement, and so really encourage you to monitor what kinds of opportunities that will provide for learners in terms of training, because it certainly is a focus as we're not only hearing that there's people that remain unemployed, but there's also employers that need workers. This is a program Alberta's put together to try and bridge that gap. And I would also say that this bullet point around training and employment services directory, these are government funded programs. So basically these are free programs for people that are looking for a learning opportunity to help transition into a different employment situation for themselves. And finally, there are resources for employers out there. And so even though you as a job seeker can't apply for these resources, just to sort of leverage something Bimal already said around, well, and it was reinforced across the panel, we need to take, ownership of our learning and our careers. And so knowing what's available to employers out there is very important, because in taking ownership, it's also and knowing about these opportunities, we can certainly weave it into your discussions or your networking. You know, you find a place that you think you're a really good cultural fit, but maybe need some upskilling. Weave it into the conversation that, you know, there is training available for, or funding available for employers that want to bring in workers that maybe just need a little bit of upskilling. It doesn't have to fall totally on an employer. There's supports out there. With 2 minutes left, we want to just close up with ways to keep connected and staying up to date with the work we're doing. You know, our professional business LinkedIn page is Talent Needs for the Evolving Energy Ecosystem. We try to share articles and announcements about training programs, including some of our webinars. And so follow us, and then that's one of the main ways we share information we have about what's coming up. Our personal pages are also there. You can connect with us personally. We put out a newsletter, and that again is another way we try to share information about what's happening in the economy, a bit of monitoring on the job posting side of things. And stay tuned for other upcoming events related to, you know, the talent needs for the evolving energy ecosystem and economy as a whole. In particular, we're planning some events where job seekers can actually connect with employers. So those will be advertised in our newsletter as well as LinkedIn and that kind of stuff. And at noon, I just want to say thank you to our panelists. Thanks for our participants. And boy, what a fabulous session. I hope everybody takes away as much as I did from this session, because it's been great. Thank you.